Welcome back to Amazon Unpacked, where we talk about all the stuff management doesn't want us to talk about. I'm one of your hosts, Dylan, and I'm joined by Ira and Ellie today.
I'm Ellie. I've worked at Amazon for 2 years, and I'm excited to be here.
My name's Ira, and I'm glad to be back. I've been at Amazon a few years myself now.
So today we're going to be talking about that pay raise we got and some new departments that are popping up in our warehouse.
Union busters.
So recently in the warehouse, they decided to give us a $1 raise. There's a few things about that. One of which showing that they had the ability to give us a dollar raise at any point, yet they saved it for when it didn't even make an economical impact on us.
Yeah. And I would say that $1 raise, it's just wildly insufficient. It doesn't even keep up with inflation.
You basically have to work 50 hours, 60 hours a week to be able to have enough to feed your family. I don't have kids, but I can barely feed myself on this wage.
Workers in America have, when you account for inflation, really not gotten a raise at all. Our raises as workers in America since the 1970s have flatlined. They've barely kept up with inflation. And when you look at that compared to the productivity and profitability of companies, that has skyrocketed. So just looking at, for instance, a chart that Vox published, company productivity since the 1970s has gone up 238%, whereas worker wages have not gone up at all. So when you account for inflation, our wages have flatlined. Their productivity has over doubled. So obviously we're doing more work for these companies than we were 50 years ago, but we're getting paid the same or in some cases less. So we're working harder, getting paid the same. And that's just a fact. That's in the statistics. You can look that up anywhere. So what really gets workers raises? Is it how hard we work for the company, how productive we are, how much money they're making? No, it's not. What the numbers also tell us is are we in unions and are we going on strike? Are we organizing ourselves into unions and are we going on strike? Because the exact years that our wages started stagnating, those are the exact years that companies started getting really aggressive at busting unions. That's the exact year that union membership started plummeting, and it's the exact years that workers stopped being organized enough to go on strike. So what the history tells us, if you look at the numbers, is it's not how hard we work. It's not how much the companies are making, but it's how organized are we and how willing are we to strike for a better life. That's what determines our wages.
Recently, there's been an upsurge in workers' willingness to go on strike. The UPS workers, who are all organized within the Teamsters Union, 97% of them voted to go on strike when their contract got up. And as soon as the contract was up, they were basically at the tail end of doing a ton of pickets where they were showing the company that they were very ready to go on strike. And the company got pretty scared and gave them a $6 raise. So their starting pay was $15 and now it's $21. And our starting pay is what, $18.50 now?
Mm-hmm. Getting back to Dylan's point, Dylan, what do we got to do here? How do we get that bread?
To get the pay that we deserve, one, we have to be united as a warehouse. We need to know that we are all in this struggle together, and that we have to start taking actual collective action together. And what does that look like? Like Ellie mentioned, it looks like pickets. It looks like the fact that we are united and that when push comes to shove, we are willing to strike to do what's necessary to get that pay raise. And half of that is organizing as a collective, not waiting for the first domino to fall or not waiting for the first action for what the small group's going to take. All of us together sticking to the whole, we deserve that respect and we deserve that raise.
Just to give sort of some brief context about what union busting is, because we already saw companies do not want us organized. They don't want us talking to each other. They don't want us sharing information with each other as workers. because that's how we get organized and that's how we start challenging their power. It's a power game. They want to have absolute power and control over us. So to do that, they'll hire special teams, or they'll develop special teams, or they'll hire consultants to put a stop to organizing efforts, to weaken unions, to make unions look bad, to do all these different things to make workers too scared or too isolated or too complacent to organize unions in their workplace. And it has a really long history. Like, I don't know if any of y'all have seen any of the like old Western movies where there were like Pinkerton detectives that were like hired by companies to hunt down the robbers and the people who were robbing the banks and stuff. Well, in reality, Pinkerton detectives were actually these private union busting firms that the most common thing they did was companies would hire them to come terrorize union organizers. That was a real thing. Those were really, that was a real company. And it still exists, right? And Amazon has actually used Pinkerton detectives in Europe before. But
wow.
Yeah, but their methods have gotten more nuanced. They're not going to send in Pinkerton detectives with guns to terrorize and like literally threaten and shoot at union organizers. They're going to send in this new pulse squad, this new pulse department to make you feel like, well, you actually don't need a union because management is really good and sweet and they've got your best interests at heart. And, we listen to you. So, it's sometimes they use sticks and sometimes they'll use carrots.
I don't know. We've been doing this for how long? And they finally say, all right, you know something? We need a department to deal with this.
Well, this is actually their second department. They've had employee relations as the first version, and now they have a new thing that they're calling Pulse. The pulse of unionizing. Is it too much for Amazon to handle?
Keeping their finger on the pulse. I mean, they've got all kinds of departments that part of what they do is union busting, right? Like they have loss prevention, which people think, oh, it's to prevent things from going missing. Well, it's also to prevent, lost profits, anything that they consider a loss to Amazon's, value or control over us. They keep track of union efforts and they basically serve as cops to survey us. HR serves a certain union busting function by trying to be this alternative avenue of helping us solve problems. Also employee relations, they serve a union busting function, but it sounds like this new one, Pulse, is very much specifically made in response to the recent uptick in worker organizing at Amazon.
Yeah, for those who don't know, if that's probably the reason why we're seeing so many red vests.
There was a guy who came up to me to talk to me today about it. It's called the Pulse Department. It's, in his words, the pulse of the warehouse. And basically what they're trying to do is talk to every single person one-on-one and ask them, how's work? How's the job? What can I do to help? And, you're supposed to put your individual grievance out there and they're supposed to, solve that problem. Well, I asked him, I said, he was like, is there anything you would change? I said, to be honest, I don't think that $1 raise was enough. And I think we should have more pay. And he was like, yeah, I get that. Well, I'll, bring that up. But it's like, he's saying, okay, I can change something directly with, one comment from someone. When it comes to actually changing the bigger things, they're not going to just change those bigger things from some one person's comment. It's going to require us to struggle and to unite together. And that's exactly why they're separating us out, so that we know not to do that, or, they think that we know not to do that.
And the way that they're building on that whole you should talk to us by yourself scenario is the new Amazon test kitchen. That's basically a virtual suggestion box. They're hoping that you go through a virtual suggestion box with your grievances to make you feel like you're heard. And then maybe 10% of what gets put in there is something that they'd consider doing. Some people probably have put that they will want a bigger pay raise. It's a virtual suggestion box. Amazon is just giving you the illusion of choice with that one.
Yeah. And I think it's important to connect this back to the question of how do we actually get a raise, and not just a raise, anything that we deserve. And again, historically, companies are making more money. We're working harder than at any other point in history. Our productivity is through the roof, but our wages don't match that. So again, what really drives wages up? It's when we as a workforce across warehouses get organized, start taking action, and fight for our interests. And the reason that something like a virtual suggestion box or these people coming around talking to us and hearing our input, the reason that doesn't get the goods is because the company, they make their profit off of exploiting us as much as they can, driving us as hard as they can. So us saying we need more money or, we need X, Y, and Z, they're not going to give us that unless we make it cost them money not to give us that. It is not in their interest to give us more money or to give us more control of our workplace. We have to force them to. And I think hearing words like strike, that scares a lot of people. But you don't start with a strike, right? You start with all these kinds of little things showing each other that we have each other's backs, showing each other that we're here for each other, and that we're trustworthy, that we can trust each other as workers. And that's a prerequisite. That's a first step to any of this type of stuff. So even though we haven't been organizing strikes and we're not formally recognized as a union at our warehouse, Amazon already sees that we're starting to do things. We're starting to come together. We're starting to talk about things as a workforce together and share our grievances. And they see the direction that's going. So now they want to start, getting ahead of that and trying to stop it before it gets out of their control. So they're going to do these virtual suggestion boxes. This is the nature of union busting. It's not always big, scary people coming in. Sometimes it's very nice looking, smiley HR people or pulse people who come in and try to put their finger on the pulse and see how you feel.
Just on the point on them, noticing that we're starting to talk to each other more, we're starting to, start organizing and start building this union here. They've actually recently, I don't know if y'all have seen the paper that they put on the table, which is like, protect your personal information. You're not obligated to speak to any organizer from Amazonians United. And they name drop us there. They say, if anyone asks you for your personal information, know that you have a right not to share it.
Also with that paper, they specifically do mention us by name in that there's two versions of that. One where they passively talk about organizing and one they directly address us.
Yeah, I have it right here. It says, and these are flyers that Amazon put out on the tables at work and posted on some of the walls, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hey, that's how you know that it's actually working for us. They copied us.
Yeah. And it says
the flyers that we handed out.
Yeah, this flyer Amazon posted says, "What should I do if someone asks for my personal information? It is important to be prepared and know your rights. 1. You have no obligation to speak to any organizer of Amazonians United or any group. 2. You have no obligation to share your personal information. 3. It's your right to say, no thanks, and I don't wish to be contacted again. 4. Nobody can force you to speak with an organizer for any group if you do not want to, even if that person is a current associate or wearing an Amazon vest. Talk to a member of site leadership or HR if you have any questions or concerns." So there's a couple things.
Don't talk to each other.
Yeah, they're doing a couple things here. They're like, you don't have to share your information or talk to Amazonians United organizers. Amazonians United organizers are just your coworkers. It's your coworkers who are organizing to form an organization of workers to fight for our interests together, right? You can be Amazonians United if you want to join us. And that's why we're talking to you. So you know what's out there, so that you know that we can organize together, right? So they're telling you, you don't have to talk to your coworkers. You don't have to share your information with your coworkers. And then you're right. At the end there, it's like, so if you have any questions, make sure you talk to management instead of your coworkers. Like, they're literally just trying to keep talking to each other.
They make it out that like, oh, Amazon cares so much about, the personal information that you're sharing. Well, they have your address, your social security number, your phone number, and way more than that. They have all of that.
Yeah, given how much of our information and data that Amazon collects directly from us, it's pretty wild that they're trying to scare us away from sharing just like our phone numbers with one another and trying to paint us as this like scary third party. Why is it that Amazon is so worried about you as a worker sharing your contact information with other coworkers and you getting in touch with each other? Why are they so nervous about that?
Even if we like look at it in a vacuum, right? Let's look at the last few months. They would be nervous for sharing our phone numbers with everyone and talking to people about like what they can do to organize stuff like that. Cause like, look at what's going on in this country right now. The writer's strike just succeeded in getting the pay that they deserve. They shut down Hollywood for more than a month.
I think like 4 months.
Mm.
For more than 4 months. It's spread into the video game industry as well. They were prepared to have Hollywood lose all their profits if it meant that they could get a fair pay. And I feel like they were empowered to do that because they were being criminally underpaid for the hours that they were working. Look at what UPS did. We're prepared to strike, had the plan to strike, and UPS realized, oh shit, 6% of gross domestic product is about to not be shipped. What are we gonna do? And when they showed that they were collected as a working class, boom, UPS couldn't stand up to that. So the reason Amazon is pulling all this stuff with trying to separate us into individuals, talk to us as individuals, and then have us not share those concerns with one another is because look what happens when you're properly organized. You get both the benefits and the pay. Also, if you look at what AI did in relation to the writer's strike, right? The AI created work during the writer's strike was absolute garbage. The AI could not pull from original work. It had nothing new to pull from. Therefore, it had to keep rehashing the same tired tropes. And it looked horrible. It looked objectively horrible. So these companies tried to replace their workers with something cheaper. But at the end of the day, there will be nothing that could do the work better than us as a working class.
That's a really good point. It's like these studios, and just to be clear, we're talking about the writer's strike, like the screenwriter strike, who write screenplays for movies and television, and criminally underpaid, like Dylan said. They hadn't had contracts updated to their benefit in probably decades, and these companies were trying to introduce, basically Chat GPT AI to replace a lot of the writers. And the writers were like, "We're going to show you how much you need us," and they went on strike for 4 months. Then the actors joined them. The actors are still on strike. And like Dylan said, then the game designers joined them. And it's a massive strike. And the companies tried to replace them with AI, and the AI couldn't do it. And so the companies caved. And like relating that back to Amazon, we hear about automation coming for our jobs, replacing our jobs. It can never fully replace our jobs. It can change our jobs, but Amazon will always need us. AI or automation can change the way they need us, but they will always need us in some way or another.
Even if we do use technology, you need workers to make that technology work.
That's why there's so many new red vests. That's why there's so many new people. There's a new pulse union busting thing that's going on at this warehouse. They all have to be here for that. Secondly, whenever things start to pick up, whenever organizing starts to pick up, you will see more managers every day than was required. It's like an intimidation tactic, if you will. And thirdly, with Prime coming up, there's always going to be if there's an influx of volume, they'll always bring like 5 more managers. Now, will that help us? No, because every manager sucks at managing. We would rather take 10 extra tier ones.
Any day.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. I would rather have more people stowing with me than have that have 5 extra managers on their laptops watching it all go to shit.
The Pulse guy who spoke to me, we were talking about managers. He asked if anything was wrong, and I said, sometimes, to be honest, they don't speak to associates with respect. And he said, is there anyone in particular? And I said, no, honestly, like, generally it happens, from time to time. There are certainly some more than others, but it's not really like a personal trait and I've heard from managers that from higher ups, they're told to move people around who are good workers. They're told to micromanage. And so that can feel disrespectful when it's a lot of control over someone. And he was like, oh, so you think it's kind of like a us versus them type thing, huh? I kind of shrugged my shoulders, and he was like, well, we're a family here.
That's fucking stupid.
We're a
We're the
family, but the family members in red vests can fire you. Discipline.
Yeah, we're family until our bottom line is threatened by bullshit. Then we're your enemy. The universe does not work.
We're a
It's
family.
trying to sway people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen how this family operates.
We're the ones lifting those packages every day. We're the ones who putting them in boxes and whose backs hurt at the end of the day after standing for 10 hours walking back and forth. I often walk 10 miles a day. We're literally getting paid so little that we have to work 60 hours to make enough to feed families. We can just barely afford to survive. Meanwhile, all the labor that we're doing is making Amazon extremely powerful and wealthy. So it's just, yeah, we can say we're a family, but at the end of the day, we work and our labor creates immense profit for the company. And the company is a bunch of people sitting on their yachts or whatever, and there's an entire class of people who sit at the top and don't work and have immense wealth off of our labor. So, you could say we're a family, but we're not.
We're a Bob's Burger style of family where the kids work for free. Basically child labor. No, that's not true. I love the Belchers. We're not that kind of family.
Yeah, Bob's Burgers is actually very wholesome. Take that back right now.
Take it back.
We're like an abusive,
they're a crusty crab enterprise.
That's true. Yeah.
We're like an abusive family where like the parents don't, they're like.
We're Cinderella's family, actually, where we're all Cinderella and we don't get to go to the ball. We're stuck home scrubbing the fire.
True. True.
I'm Dylan. I've been your host today, joined by Ira and Ellie.
Thanks, y'all. See you next time.
Bye. Thanks for having me.